Let me introduce you to a rule most people never learn. Mental speed is irrelevant. If you're running in the wrong direction, you can be twice as fast, twice as motivated, and still lose to someone moving half your pace, if their thinking is calibrated while yours is corrupted. Most minds today aren't slow, they're misaligned, built on decades of emotional noise, inherited fears, and outdated patterns. That's why this algorithm isn't based on speed, it's based on mental trajectory correction. Module 1, Cognitive Clarity. The smarter mind strips story, not because it's emotionless, but because it's allergic to distortion. We've been trained to think in stories. I was betrayed. She abandoned me. They ruined everything. Those aren't facts. They're dramatized edits. Your brain is addicted to drama because drama feels alive. But aliveness isn't clarity, it's noise. The smarter mind doesn't say, I was hurt. It says, an expectation collapsed. It doesn't say, they used me. It says, a miscalculated pattern repeated. One traps you in emotion, the other opens the door to mastery. Most people don't want truth. They want a story where they're the hero or the victim. Intelligence isn't about being the main character. It's about deleting the character so you can see the raw structure of reality. This isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming clean. No fog, no fiction, just signal. When you stop narrating, you start noticing. And in that silence, data speaks. Suddenly you realize you weren't rejected. You were redirected. You weren't betrayed. You were misaligned. You weren't cursed. You were taught. This is seeing without hallucination. Your ego will resist. It wants to be the center of a tragic movie. But the intelligent mind doesn't need a story to feel complete. It needs truth, unedited, unfiltered, unromanticized. Delete the narrative and you don't just see reality, you move through it like a ghost. Unstuck, unshaken, unstoppable. Module 2, Cognitive Velocity Mapping. Your brain isn't just thinking, it's racing toward a conclusion, rushing toward the comfort of I know. Intelligence isn't measured by how fast you answer, but by how long you can sit in the tension of the unknown without flinching. Cognitive velocity is your internal stopwatch, not to rush thought, but to observe it. Track how quickly your mind tries to end uncertainty. Watch the micro moments where it sprints to define, to label, to resolve. And instead of indulging that speed, you slow it. You feel the impulse to label someone as wrong, and you wait. You feel the urge to defend your opinion, and you don't. You stretch the gray zone. Genius isn't obsessed with being correct. It's obsessed with being precise. Precision demands time to absorb patterns, to see contradictions, to let truth reveal itself instead of forcing it out of panic. The amateur fills silence with opinion. The expert watches silence for anomaly. You stop reacting to the loudest idea and start noticing what hasn't been said. In that gap between thought and conclusion, innovation begins. This isn't indecision, it's deliberate incompleteness. You train yourself to be the last one to speak, not to be passive, but to be surgical. Drop your cognitive velocity low enough, and you don't just answer better, you perceive what others can't even see. Module 3, Concept Reversal Training. Most minds inherit frameworks and then defend them like religion. The dangerous mind does something else. It reverses instinct. When the world says, this is success, you ask, what if that's failure in disguise? When they say he's confident because he dominates, you ask, what if true confidence is the ability to disappear and still control the room? This isn't contrarian for show, it's cognitive inversion. Mental muscle that doesn't cling to patterns but interrogates them, tears them open, rebuilds them backward. Intelligence is not only creation, it's demolition. You take the accepted path and cut it in half. You take a belief and flip it until it breaks. You take an assumption and inject it with its opposite until it either shatters or transforms. Most people live in conceptual cages, boxes built from unchallenged ideas. You walk in with a mental sledgehammer. It's uncomfortable. It warps your lens. But real intelligence isn't polite, it's invasive. While the average mind upgrades by adding more knowledge, you upgrade by subtracting assumptions. You don't fear being wrong, you hunt for it. Every flawed assumption you destroy becomes a foundation stone. The most adaptable minds don't learn more, they flip faster. They can look at any system, emotional, political, strategic, and instantly see what it would become if reversed. That isn't just intelligence, that's mental insurgency. You stop following the rules of the game and start reverse engineering the game itself. That's when you stop being predictable and start being dangerous. Module 4, Narrative Deletion Protocol. Your brain doesn't remember life, it rewrites it as drama. Every event runs through a silent filter of wounds, wants, and warped memory. She didn't walk away, she abandoned you. You didn't lose a job, you were humiliated. You weren't corrected, you were disrespected. The event is neutral. The story is the infection. Narrative is emotional malware. It feels like clarity, but it's distortion wrapped in familiarity. This protocol trains you to detect it, isolate it, delete it. Ask, what actually happened without adjectives? What am I adding that doesn't belong? Behind every narrative is an ego fighting for significance. The victim, the hero, the martyr, the misunderstood genius. Intelligence doesn't want to feel right, it wants to see right. Rip out the storyline, leave only signal. She left. That's all. You made a decision. It didn't work. That's it. No shame, no symbolism, no theatrical monologue in the background, just clean data. When you process reality without narrative, you stop reliving pain and start refining perception. Stories aren't just illusions, they're loops. You repeat them long enough and you believe your own edits. That's when you go blind. Delete the story layer and you don't become cold. You become precise. You're not detaching from emotion, you're detaching from the emotional fiction. Only then can you see what happened. Not how it felt, but what it was. That's not numbness, that's psychological sovereignty. Module 5, Mirror Neuron. Override, your nervous system wasn't built for sovereignty. It was built for survival in a tribe. You mirror the tribe's stress. You reflect their fear. You copy their tension. Not because you're weak, but because evolution hardwired your neurons to sync with the room. That's why you feel tired around the unmotivated. Why anxiety spreads without a word. Why one person's rage ignites yours. It's not spiritual, it's neurological. Mirror neurons, tiny biological spies, constantly watch others and replicate them inside you. Here's what most minds never learn. You can turn the signal off. The elite thinker doesn't just react slower, they disconnect. You train yourself to become emotionally desynced, a ghost in the social matrix. Compress your facial micro-expressions until they reveal nothing. Anchor your gaze not on people's eyes, but just past them, slipping out of their emotional current. Lower your breathing into the diaphragm so your voice stays deep, calm, slow, immune to spikes. These aren't tricks, they're countermeasures. When your nervous system stops echoing others, you become psychologically invisible. You walk into chaos and feel nothing. You hear panic and your pulse doesn't change. You witness an outburst and your cognition stays clean, cold, sharp. This isn't about becoming robotic, it's about reclaiming sovereignty. The person who feels everything is easy to manipulate. The one who can feel without absorbing becomes ungovernable. You weren't born to be a mirror, you were born to be a firewall. Override the mirroring, and the world's noise stops controlling your signal. You don't adapt to the room adapts to you. Module 6, Strategic Reality Collapse. You think you see the world, but you're seeing pre-installed language, definitions downloaded before you could refuse them. You were told what success is, what love means, what failure, confidence, intelligence, even reality should look like. Most people aren't living in the world. They're living inside a simulation built by parents, culture, trauma, by society's insecurities disguised as values. You don't see what is, you see what you were taught to see. So the intelligent mind initiates a collapse. Strategic, surgical, brutal. You question every inherited definition until it crumbles under its own weight. You don't just redefine success, you delete the word. Career becomes leverage execution architecture. Confidence becomes emotional control under volatile conditions. Failure becomes tactical feedback iteration. Love becomes a neurochemical contract maintained by illusion. Truth becomes what remains after every belief has burned. You stop borrowing reality. You build it line by line, like code. When the collapse is complete, your brain stops reacting to old symbols. It no longer lights up for praise, approval, guilt, or shame. Those were responses written for an identity that no longer exists. Now you respond with design, interpret with precision, act with internal logic, not inherited myth. You are not playing society's game. You are writing your own simulation with rules that obey strategy, not tradition. This isn't rebellion. This is reprogramming. Clean operating system. Every word becomes a weapon. Every meaning becomes yours. And reality, finally, becomes negotiable. Transition from intelligence to tactical dominance. You've stripped narrative. You've overridden mimicry. You've collapsed the inherited version of reality. Now we go further, into the mental weaponry most minds never encounter. This is where the algorithm shifts from intelligence to tactical dominance. Module 7, Perceptual Weaponization. Most people observe the world passively. They see, but they don't influence. Their eyes absorb, but their mind remains neutral. You don't stay neutral. You train your vision into a strategic weapon. Here's the secret. The world doesn't run on facts, it runs on frames. The person who frames a situation controls the outcome. If you can define what is seen, you define how others feel. If you shape how they feel, you shape what they do. Perceptual dominance isn't gained by speaking louder, but by watching deeper. You speak only after scanning, facial micro-twitches, breath rhythms, pupil dilation. You notice where attention breaks, where confidence leaks, where the mask slips. Instead of reacting, you anchor. You hold stillness so precise it becomes gravitational. Movement chases attention. Stillness commands it. Then you aim your words, not at their words, but at their subtext. Ask the question they avoided. Reflect their emotion back without judgment, just data. Don't confront, reveal. Become a lens, not a mirror. They don't see themselves in you. They see themselves because of you. Your presence begins to edit the behavior of the room, not through intimidation, but because your gaze makes the mask unbearable. When others feel psychologically naked in your presence, you don't assert power, they surrender it. Own the frame, and you don't follow reality, you rewrite it. Module 8, Time Compression Thinking. The average person wastes time not out of laziness, but out of belief. Belief that there's more. They act like time is renewable, as if the future will always stretch far enough to fix today's delay. Here's the truth. Time doesn't run out, it collapses, quietly, violently, without warning. The smarter mind doesn't live in years. It lives in decision loops, tiny cycles of clarity and execution that stack into advantage. You stop asking, how much time do I have? And start asking, how many cycles can I run before they blink? Your day becomes a mental battlefield. Every task gets two options, execute or discard. No negotiation, no emotional buffering. Conversations pass through precision filters. Does this build leverage, reveal truth, redirect momentum? If not, it dies in your mind before it steals energy. You stop attending meetings that don't move a needle. You stop explaining yourself to people who only listen to reaffirm their ego. You stop operating on clock time and start operating on mental efficiency per second. The younger mind beats the experienced one not by collecting more knowledge, but by compressing the distance between thought and outcome. You don't run faster, you cut the distance. You don't panic, you prioritize with surgical brutality. While others live in monthly goals and 5-year plans, you loop decisions, extract insights, adapt mid-conversation. This isn't hustle, it's temporal warfare. Shrink time into action, and reality bends forward at a pace most people mistake for genius. Module 9, Tactical Identity Engineering. You were told to be yourself, but no one told you the truth. The self is a construction site, not a discovery. The average person wanders, waiting to find who they are. The elite design who they must become. Identity isn't a soul, it's strategy in motion. You are not a fixed self, you're a response system, and responses can be engineered. You ask what traits dismantle manipulators before they act? What tone makes chaos lose footing? What posture turns criticism into self-reflection in others? What presence makes people second-guess attacking me? Stop identifying with your past. Stop defending your default personality. Your current self was built by accident, by childhood, by trauma, by social feedback loops. Now you build on purpose. Don't ask, who am I? Ask what identity wins in this environment, then code that identity. Maybe you need to be colder. Maybe you need to be funnier. Maybe you need to eliminate softness from your voice or refine the chaos in your energy. This isn't fakery, it's tailoring. You aren't here to express a raw self. You're here to deploy the most effective version of you for the battlefield you occupy. You become the person who enters a room and changes the emotional algorithm by standing still. No wasted movements, no needless words, no leaky energy. You don't react to the world, you redesign your interface with it. When identity is engineered tactically, you don't just survive the game, you reprogram it. Module 10, Cognitive Asymmetry Protocol. Most people fight in straight lines. Their logic is linear, their arguments predictable, their reactions rehearsed. They lose not because they're dumb, but because they're symmetrical. Symmetry kills advantage. It locks you on the same battlefield as everyone else. Same assumptions, same tempo, same blind spots. The elite mind refuses that game. It thinks sideways. It bends logic. It weaponizes silence. They speak, you pause. They press, you retreat strategically. They expect fire, and you hand them a mirror. Cognitive asymmetry means you don't react where they expect. You don't play by the emotional rules they understand. Instead of arguing facts, you ask a question that scrambles their foundation. Instead of defending yourself, you reframe the entire discussion. Instead of trying to win the point, you collapse the context in which the point exists. You corner them not by overpowering, but by letting their own logic implode. They say you're wrong. You ask, what would you need to see to be right? Now they must define proof. Now they're boxed in. Now you control the frame. This isn't debate, it's neurological redirection. The smartest fighter isn't the one with force. It's the one whose rhythm can't be tracked, whose moves aren't answers, but traps. You move second, but you control tempo. You stay calm, but you bend perception. By the time they realize you were never on the same level, it's already over. You didn't fight them. You made them fight themselves. Invisible domination. Module 11, Pressure Response. Override stress doesn't just reveal you, it edits you. Under heat, your voice tightens, your breath shortens, your thoughts fragment. You respond from instinct, not insight. From fear, not structure. From survival, not strategy. Minds collapse in crisis, not from fragility, but from training. They were never taught how to think under fire. This isn't about staying calm. It's about overriding your nervous system before it hijacks cognition. Install protocols. Slower breathing as pressure rises. Telling your body, we're not dying, we're deciding. Third-person self-dialogue in confrontation. Remove I'm under attack. Replace it with he's analyzing tension. Temporal decoupling, 5-second spike delay. When emotion floods, don't suppress it. Pause it, let it rise, and then move. In those 5 seconds, others will speak too soon, make the wrong call, reveal their fear, you reposition. You're not suppressing reaction, you're refining it. While others burn fuel, you convert pressure into processing power. You outperform people with more experience, not with more data, but with better response timing. You don't just survive stress, you weaponize it. Pressure becomes your sharpening stone. Each confrontation, another calibration. Each surge of panic, another drill. Make it automatic, and you won't fear confrontation. You'll feed on it. Others fight not to break. You fight to refocus faster than they can think. In that razor-thin gap, you win. Module 12, Silence Coding. Most people speak to fill space, to prove relevance, to quiet their discomfort with emptiness. Here's the truth. Noise reveals insecurity. Silence reveals control. You were taught that intelligence sounds like words. Fast talk, quick facts, dominant tone. But true intelligence doesn't express. It compresses. The elite mind speaks in reductions. And between those reductions, coded silence. Not passive, not peaceful, precisely engineered. Each pause becomes a psychological disruptor. It breaks the listener's rhythm, slows assumptions, forces them to wait. While they wait, they reflect. While they reflect, you steer. This isn't silence for calm, it's silence for control. You don't answer instantly. You stall their timing, you shift the beat. In that micro-temporal shift, their brain lags just enough for you to slip behind their logic. You create discomfort, because discomfort opens mental space. Once they're off rhythm, your words land like precision strikes. No fluff, no buildup, just payload. One sentence, compressed data, one pause, mental reset, one glance, emotional recalibration. You're not just speaking, you're timing cognition. Thought that arrives late is reactive, weak. Thought that arrives early is preemptive, surgical, dominant. Silence becomes your scalpel, a tool to slow the world until everyone else moves in panic. And you write the tempo they didn't know changed. You don't chase attention, you restructure it. When silence is your weapon, presence becomes your strategy. Recap and installation. If you've made it this far, you're not average. You're not scrolling for dopamine. You're here for power, mental power, psychological sovereignty, cognitive weapons the world was never going to hand you. Understand this, knowing the protocols won't change your life. Installing them will. 12 installs, cognitive clarity, cognitive velocity mapping, concept reversal, narrative deletion, mirror neuron override, strategic reality collapse, perceptual weaponization, time compression thinking, tactical identity engineering, cognitive asymmetry, pressure response override, silence coding, strip story, slow the rush, flip assumptions, delete the malware, stop mirroring, collapse the old language, own the frame, shrink time, deploy identity, bend rhythm, override stress, weaponize silence. This is trajectory correction. This is mental sovereignty. This is how you stop being predictable and start becoming untouchable. If this recalibrated your system, tap like so it reaches the people who need it. Subscribe for weekly upgrades to your mental operating system. And check the pinned comment for the next layer. No fluff, just frameworks they hope you never find. Welcome to the algorithm they can't predict.